The bouquet slipped from my hands before I even realized I had stopped breathing. Scarlet roses scattered across the polished marble floor while 2 tickets to Paris floated down beside them like broken promises. Just a few feet away, surrounded by applause, balloons, and smiling co-workers, my husband was on one knee in front of another woman. The diamond ring sparkling between his fingers wasn't meant for me. The giant screen behind them flashed bright red letters that read, "Will you marry me, Victoria?" Every face in the room glowed with excitement except mine. I stood frozen inside the elevator doorway, wearing the dress he once told me made me look like the luckiest woman alive. Instead, I had become the only person in the room who didn't know my marriage had already ended. My heart didn't shatter all at once. It cracked quietly, one heartbeat at a time, as my husband looked up, saw me standing there, and went completely pale. Before we continue this emotional journey, if you believe that kindness is stronger than cruelty, forgiveness takes more courage than revenge, and hope can still bloom after heartbreak, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another unforgettable story. Your support helps our community continue sharing real emotions and meaningful journeys. My name is Meredith Lawson, and until that afternoon, I believed I had built a beautiful life with the man I loved more than anything. I was 34 years old, worked as a pediatric physical therapist, and spent my days helping children take their first confident steps after injuries or illnesses. Every tiny victory in my clinic reminded me that healing always came slowly, one determined step at a time. Ironically, I never imagined that I would soon need to relearn how to walk through my own life after everything I believed collapsed beneath me. My husband, Declan Pierce, was charming in a way that seemed almost effortless. He could make strangers laugh while waiting in grocery store lines, remember everyone's birthday without checking a calendar, and convince anyone that he cared deeply about them. Those qualities were exactly what had attracted me 8 years earlier when we met during a charity fundraiser. Everyone admired his confidence, but I admired the quieter moments even more, the way he held doors open for elderly couples or patiently helped lost tourists find directions downtown. At least, I thought those moments revealed his true character. For 7 years of marriage, I believed we had survived every challenge together. We bought a modest house outside Portland with a little white porch and planted rose bushes that never seemed to bloom quite right. We dreamed about traveling through Europe someday. We argued over paint colors, laughed about our terrible cooking experiments, rescued an aging golden retriever named Winston, and celebrated every anniversary with handwritten letters instead of expensive gifts. We weren't wealthy, but I thought we were rich in everything that truly mattered. The previous year had been difficult. Declan had accepted a management position at one of the city's fastest-growing technology companies. The promotion came with longer hours, endless meetings, constant business trips, and a new CEO named Victoria Hawthorne. He often described her as brilliant, demanding, and determined to transform the company into an international success. Whenever her name appeared during dinner conversations, I barely paid attention. I trusted my husband completely. If anything, I felt proud that someone so accomplished respected his work. As Valentine's Day approached, Declan apologized several times for being too busy to celebrate properly. He explained that the company was preparing for a major investor presentation and everyone was working overtime. He promised we would celebrate the following weekend instead. I smiled, kissed his forehead, and told him work came first. Secretly, however, I wanted to surprise him. For weeks I quietly saved part of every paycheck until I could afford 2 airline tickets to Paris. Years earlier, during our honeymoon road trip, we had promised each other that one day we would stand beneath the Eiffel Tower together. Life kept getting in the way. Mortgage payments, medical bills, home repairs, and everyday responsibilities always seemed more important than vacations. This year, I wanted to remind him that dreams didn't have expiration dates. I arranged for the tickets, ordered his favorite roses instead of mine because he always joked that flowers should belong to everyone, and planned to surprise him during his lunch break. I imagined his smile when he saw the tickets. I pictured us laughing, hugging, and forgetting every stressful month we had endured. That dream lasted exactly 23 seconds after the elevator doors opened. No one noticed me at first. The conference room was overflowing with employees holding champagne glasses. Heart-shaped decorations hung from the ceiling, and a professional photographer moved around capturing every emotional reaction. A string quartet played softly in the corner while cameras recorded the entire celebration. Victoria stood at the center wearing an elegant white suit that looked more bridal than professional. Declan knelt before her holding a velvet ring box. Someone shouted congratulations. Another employee wiped away happy tears. The photographer asked everyone to clap louder. Then Declan saw me. His expression transformed so quickly that even people standing nearby turned to see what had stolen his smile. Silence spread through the room like a wave. The applause faded. Victoria slowly looked over her shoulder. Every pair of eyes settled on me. I wish I could say I handled the moment with dignity. I wish I had delivered some unforgettable speech or dramatically confronted them both. The truth was much simpler. My body refused to move. My chest felt hollow, as if someone had quietly removed my heart without leaving a scar. The bouquet slipped from my hands. The airline tickets landed beside the roses. Victoria noticed them first. She glanced from the tickets to my face and then toward Declan with obvious confusion. Her smile disappeared instantly. Only then did I realize something strange. She looked shocked too. Not guilty. Not embarrassed. Simply, confused. Before anyone spoke, I turned around and walked back into the elevator. I never looked behind me. The doors closed. Only after they sealed shut did my legs finally begin shaking so violently that I had to lean against the wall just to remain standing. Outside the building, bright afternoon sunshine filled the streets with ordinary life. Couples laughed at sidewalk cafes. Office workers carried coffee cups across busy intersections. Street musicians performed cheerful melodies that somehow made the silence inside me feel even louder. I climbed into my car but couldn't remember how to start the engine. My phone buzzed immediately. Declan. Then again. And again. By the time I reached home nearly 40 minutes later, I had 37 missed calls and dozens of frantic text messages. I didn't read a single one. Instead, I walked through every room of our house, touching familiar objects as though seeing them for the first time. The framed wedding photograph above the fireplace. The blanket we bought during our honeymoon. Winston's favorite toy lying near the couch. Every memory suddenly felt borrowed from someone else's life. I finally opened the Paris envelope. The tickets were still perfect. 2 seats. 7 days. Everything non-refundable. Tears finally came, not in dramatic sobs but in quiet streams that refused to stop. Winston rested his head on my lap as though he sensed the invisible earthquake shaking my world apart. Hours passed before I noticed another vehicle pulling into the driveway. Declan stepped out. He looked nothing like the confident executive everyone admired. His tie hung loose around his neck. His hair was disheveled. His face looked exhausted. He approached the front door slowly, almost fearfully. Through the window, I watched him hesitate several times before finally knocking. I didn't answer. He remained there. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally he sat down on the porch steps, lowered his face into his hands, and stayed there without moving. For the first time since the conference room, I felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness. Not sympathy. Only questions. Because despite everything I had witnessed with my own eyes, Victoria's confused expression refused to leave my mind. It was the one detail that didn't fit. And somehow, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story I thought I understood had only just begun. The next morning, daylight poured through the living room windows, but it brought no warmth into Meredith's heart. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same image replaying over and over again, the bouquet slipping from her hands, the applause, the ring, and Declan kneeling before another woman. She had spent years believing that betrayal was something that happened in dramatic movies or heartbreaking stories shared by strangers online. She never imagined she would become the woman people whispered about with sympathetic eyes. When she finally looked outside, Declan was still sitting on the porch. He hadn't left. His expensive suit jacket was folded beside him, his sleeves were rolled up, and exhaustion covered his face. It was obvious he hadn't slept either. Meredith quietly opened the front door. Declan immediately stood, relief flashing across his face before guilt swallowed it again. He stepped forward, but Meredith instinctively took one step backward. That tiny movement hurt him more than any words could have. He didn't try to touch her again. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence felt heavier than shouting ever could. Finally, Meredith looked directly into his eyes. "I only want the truth." Declan closed his eyes. He nodded slowly. "I owe you every single truth." They sat across from each other in the dining room where they had celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and countless Sunday breakfasts. Now the same table felt like a courtroom. Declan stared at the untouched coffee between his hands before speaking. 6 months earlier, Victoria Hawthorne had privately approached him with an unusual proposal, not a romantic one, but a professional arrangement. The company was preparing for a massive merger worth hundreds of millions of dollars. One of the largest investors strongly preferred companies led by married executives because they believed stable family lives reflected responsible leadership. Victoria had spent years hiding her personal life from the public, but now the board wanted her image to appear more family-oriented. Public relations consultants suggested staging a fake engagement announcement to create positive media attention before the merger. Several executives rejected participating. Declan eventually agreed. Not because he loved Victoria. Because Victoria promised him a promotion worth nearly 3 times his current salary after the merger. She also knew about Meredith's dream of opening a pediatric rehabilitation center one day. Declan convinced himself he was sacrificing his reputation temporarily so Meredith could eventually have the career she deserved. He signed strict confidentiality agreements. He wasn't allowed to tell anyone. Not even his wife. Meredith listened without interrupting. When he finished, she quietly asked the only question that mattered. If it was fake, why did she look surprised when she saw me? Declan looked completely defeated. Because she didn't know I was married. Meredith felt the room spin. What? Declan lowered his head. The consultants believed investors wanted the CEO to appear engaged to an unmarried executive. They instructed me to remove every trace of my marriage from company events, social media, and internal biographies. Victoria assumed I was single because that's what the board told her. Meredith stared at him in disbelief. So for 6 months, you erased me. He couldn't deny it. He simply nodded. I kept telling myself it would only be temporary. Meredith's eyes filled with tears. You didn't cheat on me physically. No, but you erased my existence. His silence answered her. Sometimes emotional betrayal cuts deeper than physical betrayal. Meredith stood. I need you to leave. Declan didn't argue. He quietly placed his wedding ring on the table before walking toward the door. Halfway there he stopped. I deserve whatever happens next. Then he left. 3 days later Meredith returned to work. She desperately wanted life to feel normal again. Children still smiled. Parents still thanked her. The therapy room still echoed with tiny victories. But inside, she felt empty. Everyone could see something had changed. Her closest colleague, Betrayal Donovan, waited until lunch before gently asking if everything was all right. Meredith finally broke down. Not dramatically. Not loudly. She simply cried into her friend's shoulder until there were no tears left. Betrayal listened without interrupting. Then she said something Meredith would never forget. The worst betrayals aren't always affairs. Sometimes it's being made invisible. Those words stayed with Meredith all week. Meanwhile, across the city, chaos erupted inside Declan's company. Someone had leaked photographs from the proposal event. Employees anonymously informed journalists that the engagement announcement had been staged for investors. The story exploded online. The company's stock immediately dropped. The board launched an internal investigation. Victoria was furious. Not because Meredith had appeared. Because she had discovered everyone had lied to her too. She learned Declan had a wife. She learned executives had manipulated both of them. She learned investors had been intentionally deceived. For the first time, she realized she had also been used. Within days she resigned publicly. The board blamed everyone except themselves. Declan became the easiest person to sacrifice. He was fired immediately. Every promotion. Every bonus. Every promise. Gone. A week later, Meredith received an unexpected letter. Not from Declan. From Victoria. Inside was a handwritten note. Victoria apologized for unknowingly participating in something that had devastated another woman. She admitted she had spent her entire career believing success required sacrificing honesty. Meeting Meredith had forced her to realize how many lives corporate ambition could destroy. Enclosed was something else. A complete copy of every internal email discussing the fake engagement. Every executive who approved it. Every lie. Every signature. Including Declan's. Meredith spent hours reading hundreds of pages. One sentence hurt more than anything else. One executive had written, "His wife never needs to know." She quietly folded the papers. For the first time, anger replaced heartbreak. Not blind rage. Clear determination. She wasn't interested in revenge anymore. She wanted accountability. Over the following weeks, Meredith shared the documents with investigative reporters and financial regulators. She never exaggerated. She never lied. She simply handed them the truth. The story spread nationwide. Several executives resigned. Multiple investigations began. Investors demanded answers. The company lost millions. Meredith never smiled while watching it happen. Because none of it gave her marriage back. It only proved that truth eventually catches those who try to bury it. Months passed. Spring slowly painted the city with fresh color. The roses outside Meredith's house finally bloomed for the first time in years. She smiled sadly at the coincidence. One sunny afternoon she found herself holding the Paris tickets again. They had expired. She almost threw them away. Instead, she placed them inside a memory box. Not because she wanted to remember Declan. But because she wanted to remember the woman she had been before heartbreak taught her how strong she truly was. Before we reach the final chapter of Meredith's journey, take a moment to tell us in the comments, could you forgive someone who never physically cheated but erased you from their life for success? Or would that betrayal be impossible to overcome? 1 year later, Meredith Lawson stood in front of a large glass building surrounded by children laughing in the courtyard. Sunlight reflected from the windows while colorful murals covered the entrance. Parents carried toddlers inside, therapists welcomed new patients with warm smiles, and volunteers arranged books and toys in a bright waiting room. Above the entrance, a simple sign displayed the name she had dreamed about for years, the First Steps Children's Rehabilitation Center. She wasn't there because life had magically repaired itself. She was there because she had finally learned that broken dreams can become the foundation for even greater ones. The center had not been built with money from a lawsuit or a dramatic settlement. Meredith had never sued Declan or the company. Instead, after the corporate scandal became national news, several charitable foundations learned about her original dream of creating an affordable rehabilitation clinic for children whose families couldn't pay for expensive therapy. They reached out after reading interviews where she never spoke with hatred or bitterness. She focused only on honesty, healing, and protecting others from similar deception. One foundation director later admitted that what impressed them most wasn't Meredith's tragedy. It was her refusal to become consumed by revenge. Within months, donations began arriving from complete strangers. Former patients' families volunteered. Local businesses donated equipment. Retired therapists offered free training. Construction companies reduced their costs. People from every walk of life quietly helped build something beautiful out of the ruins of one woman's heartbreak. As Meredith walked through the therapy rooms that morning, children greeted her with hugs. A little boy proudly showed her that he could finally climb a small staircase without assistance. A young girl who had once been afraid to walk after surgery now raced across the colorful floor with laughter echoing through the building. Each smile healed a small part of Meredith that she once believed was gone forever. She realized something extraordinary. For months after Valentine's Day, she had believed Declan had stolen her future. Instead, he had unknowingly redirected it. Declan's life looked completely different. After losing his position, no major company wanted to hire him. His name had become closely associated with the scandal. Recruiters politely declined interviews. Former colleagues stopped returning his calls. He eventually accepted a modest position managing inventory for a family-owned hardware supplier nearly an hour outside the city. The salary wasn't impressive. The office wasn't luxurious. Nobody recognized him there. For the first time in years, nobody cared about executive titles, expensive watches, or networking events. They only cared whether he worked honestly. And he did. He arrived early. Stayed late. Never complained. The confidence that once bordered on arrogance had quietly transformed into humility. Every paycheck reminded him that integrity was worth far more than prestige. He never blamed Meredith. He blamed himself. Throughout that year, he wrote Meredith dozens of letters. Not emails. Not text messages. Real handwritten letters. He never begged her to return. He never defended his choices. He simply apologized. Sometimes he described memories from happier days. Sometimes he admitted mistakes he hadn't even recognized before. Sometimes he wrote only one sentence. I hope today gave you one reason to smile. Meredith read every letter. She answered none. Not because she hated him. Because forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. She had forgiven the anger. She had not rebuilt the trust. One warm spring afternoon, nearly 14 months after Valentine's Day, Meredith attended a community fundraiser for children's healthcare. Families filled the park. Food trucks lined the sidewalks. Musicians performed cheerful songs beneath bright blue skies. Children painted colorful butterflies on small canvases. As Meredith greeted supporters, she unexpectedly noticed someone standing near the edge of the crowd. Declan. He looked healthier than she remembered. Not richer. Not more successful. Simply, peaceful. He didn't approach immediately. Instead, he quietly purchased several raffle tickets supporting Meredith's rehabilitation center. He donated anonymously. He smiled as children ran past him. When the event finally slowed, their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Declan slowly walked over. There were no dramatic speeches. No tears. No desperate promises. He simply congratulated her. I heard the center already helped over 300 children. Meredith smiled softly. They're the reason I wake up excited every morning. Declan nodded. I always believed you would change lives. She looked at him carefully. And you? He smiled with quiet honesty. I'm learning how to become someone I should have been years ago. There was something different about him. The constant hunger for success had disappeared. For the first time since she met him, he looked completely genuine. They spent nearly an hour talking beneath the afternoon sun. Not about the affair everyone believed had happened. Not about the scandal. Not about Paris. Instead, they talked about Winston, who had grown older but still insisted on chasing tennis balls. They talked about Meredith's patience. They talked about Declan's elderly co-workers who reminded him every day that kindness mattered more than ambition. Conversation felt surprisingly easy. Not because everything had healed. Because neither of them was pretending anymore. Before leaving, Declan reached into his jacket. Meredith instinctively stiffened. He noticed. Instead of pulling out a ring, he removed 2 small paper tickets. They were admission passes to the city's botanical gardens. I bought these months ago, he admitted. I almost threw them away. Meredith looked at the tickets. They expire tomorrow. I know. He smiled gently. I wasn't asking for another chance. He placed them on the nearby bench. I just thought flowers deserved a better memory. Then he walked away. He never looked back. Meredith stood there watching him disappear into the crowd. The tickets remained on the bench. She stared at them for several minutes. Finally, she picked them up. Not because she had made a decision. Because she wanted the freedom to make one. The following afternoon, sunshine filled the botanical gardens. Thousands of flowers bloomed beneath cloudless skies. Children chased butterflies across green lawns. Artists painted landscapes. Elderly couples walked hand in hand. Meredith arrived first. She honestly wasn't sure whether Declan would come. 5 minutes later, she saw him walking toward the entrance carrying nothing in his hands. No gifts. No roses. No expectations. Only hope. They spent the afternoon exploring the gardens. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they simply admired the flowers in comfortable silence. There were no promises about the future. No dramatic declarations of love. Trust, once broken, doesn't return in a single afternoon. It grows slowly, the same way gardens do. One careful season at a time. Over the following year, they met occasionally. Sometimes for coffee. Sometimes volunteering together at the rehabilitation center. Sometimes simply walking Winston through the neighborhood where they had once dreamed about growing old. Friendship returned first. Respect followed. Love came much later. Not the innocent love they once shared. A wiser one. A quieter one. One built on honesty instead of appearances. 3 years after the Valentine's Day that nearly destroyed them, Meredith and Declan stood together in front of the rehabilitation center as children released hundreds of colorful balloons into the bright afternoon sky during the annual family celebration. Someone asked if they were husband and wife. Meredith looked at Declan. He looked back at her. Then they both smiled. We're partners, she answered. It was the truest answer she could give. Not because every wound had disappeared. But because both of them had learned that real love isn't measured by grand gestures, expensive rings, or public applause. It is measured by truth. By accountability. By choosing honesty even when dishonesty seems easier. By protecting the people who trust you the most. As the children laughed around them, Meredith looked toward the blooming rose garden planted beside the center. For years she had hated roses because they reminded her of the bouquet she dropped on that unforgettable Valentine's Day. Now they reminded her of something entirely different. Even after being cut, damaged, or nearly destroyed, a rose bush can bloom again with enough care, patience, and sunlight. So can a human heart. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced a betrayal that changed your life? What do you believe is harder, to forgive someone, or to trust them again? Leave a meaningful comment below because your story might encourage someone who feels alone today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for spending your time with our community. Remember, betrayal may change your path, but it never has the power to define your future. Sometimes the life waiting beyond heartbreak becomes the life you were always meant to live.